Analyzing and planning the rig is a great idea. All right, it's always a good idea. Usually when rigging something for either yourself or for others, you'll need to know what the rig is intended for and what action it'll need to perform. It's always a good idea to ask questions, look at the concept art, and get a feel for what the rig really needs. Now, taking the time to analyze the model carefully and plan what is needed so the rig goes smoothly is also very important. All right, so initially we wanted to keep things simple, so we decided to go with simple shapes for the design. Now, a sphere seemed perfect. Now, this was a great test run for trialing out some rigging ideas, but in the end, we decided it was a little too complicated for what we wanted to do for the section C here. Now, even starting with a simple shape can end up going off rails in complexity, it would seem. Now, so we went back to the sphere concept some more and took a look at some other ways to remix this sphere robot idea. So looking for inspiration, I stumbled upon Blip, a character from Animation Mentor, which was designed and created by Design Studios. Now, mixing some of those ideas together, Blip and the first sphere robot, we eventually came up with this newer, simpler version that incorporates all the same functions of the complex sphere one into this much simpler and faster to rig version. All right, let's start by analyzing the actual conceptual artwork. So if you open C_01_roboconcept.blend, you're presented with this grease pencil concept that I did for this character. So it's basically a little spy robot about the size of an egg or maybe a little bit bigger. And it has a little rotor at the back to allow it to turn while it's flying, and it has a retractable quad blade. So basically the shaft pops out and then the rotor pops out, and while it pops out, the actual blade sort of unfold into place and then lock underneath that, and then from there it can spin and fly. It has 4 legs that can pop out, walk on the ground, jump and stuff like that. And it has a little door at the back with a little USB-C cable that can pop out and plug into stuff so it can download information. And then it has a camera type like eye with a movable iris, so we can actually make it look sideways and stuff like that, give it character, if you will. And then we'll have a little ring of light around it that would also help us give us cues as to what the robot is doing. Is it downloading? Is it emoting? Is it scared? And so on and so forth. So this is basically what we need to rig and how it needs to actually function. All right, now that we know what this concept is supposed to be doing, let's take a look at the model. So if you open C_01_robo_rigging_start.blend, you'll be presented with this model that me and Gleb did. I did the model and then Gleb modified the crap out of it and textured it and made it ready for actual game, if you will. This is going to be real time, so that's perfect. All right, so we did intentionally, made sure that we do have some cleanup to do, because this is really common. If you get a model from somebody that you need to rig, you'll need to do a little bit of editing before being able to just dive into rigging. So there's a few things to take into consideration. So first, let's take a look at the wireframe. All right, this looks very clean. Now it has a subdivision modifier, that's for sure. So there's some modifiers in there that are needed. And there's a few different parts, obviously. So if we expand the actual folders, we have a ring for the light, all right, that has the same sort of settings than this one. So we could technically merge these two, all right, together. We can leave it separate as well. So let's just bring everything to the Robo collection here. So we're going to rename the Robo collection. I'm going to bring the glass there. I'm going to bring the pupil in there. I'm going to bring the NURBS pad, which is an actual cable, and I'm going to bring the light. So let's just rename them what they are. So light, and this NURBS pad is the cable. So I'm going to name it cable. This is the pupil, and then you have the Robo itself. So we're just going to name it Robo. So pupil, glass, cable, light, and so on. So we don't need a sunlight to rig this. So we're going to get rid of that. And we don't need the extra folders. So we're going to delete these extra collections. All right, so let's delete those. So now we have the Robo collection here. So the Robo is going to be inside there. All right, so that's perfect. So we've cleaned up that part. We can see that the NURBS have some hooks in the modifier panel. Let's get rid of that. Now we do see that there is one, probably 2 or 3 materials inside there. If we go to the materials and look at them, oh, there's quite a few materials. All right, so there's some that are probably not used in there, but it's okay. All right, that shouldn't be too much of a problem in terms of rigging. Let's actually dock that back up so we don't have that in the way of our rigging. And let's actually make sure that we have simplify on, so that way we're looking at the lowest subdivision. Simplify is basically a means to actually bring or affect all the objects in the scenes at once and bring the subdivision down to 0 or 1 or whatever that is comfortable with what you need to work on. In my case, I need to bring it to the lowest, so I set it to 0. Now, this also affects particles as well as the render. So if you hit F12 to render, well, you should probably set that to the subdivisions that you want. In my case, I'm not rendering. And it's fairly low, so this is going to be quite easy to rig. Now let's take a look at the parts. So these parts, although they're one object, if you actually take a look at them, they're not actually welded parts. All right, so if I turn off the see-through mode, so if I select this and press Control L, you'll notice that this part is not welded to the rotor and so on and so forth. All right, so that's good. So that means that the actual file that we're working with is going to be fairly easy to work with. So it's non-welded parts. And so that's very important as well. Now, what we need to make sure is that the parts are at the right place. So if we go back to the see-through mode, we can clearly see that the NURBS cable is not at the right place. So let's actually go and align that in there. So I'm just going to quickly align it with the USB inside there. And I'm going to pull it out because this is the cable inside that's going to be retracted. And now what we need to do is to have all of these to be on top of the grid here. So I'm going to grab the rectangle lasso and I'm going to select everything. I'm going to press G and then ZZ. So by pressing Z twice, you're actually going to global Z. Normally, you might be used to pressing Z one time for global mode and then Z again to get to local mode. But since we're already set to local mode, as you can see on the top, that behavior is reversed. All right, so that way you make sure to move up. All right, I'm just going to eyeball sitting it right on top of the actual grid. All right, so that should be perfect. So now we need all of the objects to have their origin at the actual center of the grid. So it shares the exact same origin as the armature that we're going to create. So let's select all of the object and simply go to Object, Apply, and then All Transform. So now all the center point, even of the NURBS path, is actually right there. So that's perfect. All right. So if we do export this to either a game engine or another 3D application, they will all result at the same place. So it won't create an issue with this rig because the armature will be at the same space or the same origin point of the actual models. So also another thing that I like to do before starting to rig is to place this in a place where I have better access to it. Right now it's docked there and it's, you know, very minimal. So what I like to do is I'd like to just pop that up there, and we're going to pop the timeline down. So I don't need the timeline to actually rig, and we're actually going to pop another window open on the side here, and we're going to switch this to the outliner. So I now can dock my outliner. And so I'm also going to make sure that everything here is ready for me to toggle on and off as I'm working. All right, so that's another thing that I like to do before rigging. Now, once we need the timeline, if we need the timeline, we're going to pop it open. But for now, we're pretty much ready to dive into rigging this.